Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The Chinese Defense Minister Wei Feng criticized the United States for its support for self-rule in Taiwan and for naval operations in the disputed South China Sea, but said war between the two countries would be a disaster. Wei told the Shangri-La meeting in Singapore, Asia's premier defense summit, that China would fight to the end if anyone tried to split China from Taiwan, which Beijing considers an integral territory to be taken by force if necessary.
The US is indivisible, so is China, obviously. China must be and will be reunited. We find no excuse not to do so. If anyone dares to split Taiwan from China, the Chinese military has no choice but to fight at all costs for national unity.
Wei Fenghe also rejected escalating United States economic aggression against China, saying that while the country is open to negotiations, it won't be bullied.
In terms of the trade war launched by the United States, if they want to talk, the door is open. If they want to fight, we will fight to the end. As Chinese people say, wanna talk? Let's talk. Wanna fight? Let's do it. Wanna bully us? Bring on.
And now we move on to Iran, where they have rejected comments made by the United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, offering talks as wordplay and the expression of a hidden agenda in new forms. President Hassan Rouhani said that the United States' proposal of unconditional talks is an indication of Iran's position of strength, adding that the United States threatened war as if they were a military superpower, but now say they don't want conflict. Rouhani also said that it is up to the United States to return to the negotiating table after it unilaterally left 2015 nuclear deal agreed by United Nations Security Council, Germany, and the European Union. Pompeo's comments indicate a softening of rhetoric of Iran after U.S. escalated tensions in the region by significantly expanding its military presence. And Qatar has expressed its dissatisfaction with the Gulf summit hosted by Saudi Arabia, saying Washington's policy towards Iran has been adopted, not one that considers regional neighbors. The Qatari Foreign Minister Mohammed Abdulrahman Al Thani said that the summit condemned Iran but did not offer a policy to speak with the country. Abdul Rahman went on to question a call for regional unity while his country remains subject to a Saudi-led blockade. The foreign minister added that important issues including Palestine and the wars in Libya and Yemen were ignored. And violent protests erupted after Israeli forces escorted hundreds of ultra-nationalist youths into the compound of a mosque in Jerusalem, where non-Muslim prayers have been banned. Police fired tear gas and rubber-coated bullets to disperse Muslim worshippers, some of whom threw rocks and share at the Jewish groups to prevent them from entering the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Jewish pilgrims claims an exclusive right to the site, which was once the location of two biblical temples. It was, however, the first time in 3 decades that non-Muslims were let into the compound during the final days of Ramadan, which coincided with this year with Jerusalem's Day, the Israeli national holiday commemorating control over the city. The mosque director has accused Jewish groups of violating an agreement which does not allow such visits in the last 10 days of the holy months of Ramadan. And the Israeli army continues to arbitrarily arrest Palestinians in the occupied territories. Nayara Tardo from Cairo sent us the following report earlier today. Welcome, Nayara.
The Israeli army continues with its mass arrests of Palestinians in occupied territories. On Sunday, at least 50 Palestinians were detained in various parts of the West Bank and Jerusalem. A report released by the Society of Palestinian Prisoners states that some 40 Palestinians were detained in a crackdown which began in the wee hours of Sunday morning. A high-level authority of the Fatah Palestinian movement was said to be among those detained. There are reports that other persons were arrested at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, where there were violent clashes after a visit by Israeli settlers to the place of worship, which is sacred to Muslims. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is one of the three most important places of worship to the world of Islam. Jewish pilgrims are prohibited from taking part in religious ceremonies there. However, police apparently made the decision to allow the Jewish group to enter on Sunday, sparking a violent clash between Muslim worshippers and Israeli riot police. In a separate incident on Friday, a 16-year-old Palestinian boy was shot as he tried to enter occupied East Jerusalem for Friday prayers at the same Al-Aqsa Mosque compound.
Thank you, Nayara. Hundreds more Quds Day in Berlin, Germany on Saturday in the solidarity with the Palestinians. Al-Quds Day, which falls on the last Friday of the month of Ramadan, is an annual event first introduced in 1979 by late Supreme Leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, as a day of protest against Zionism and Israel's control of Jerusalem.
It's very painful because, of course, as a Jewish person, I'm connected to Israel and the history of Jewish people, and I empathize with a lot of the pain that Jewish people feel, but I don't think that I think we still need to support human rights for Palestinians because they're people just like us and they have the same rights as any Jewish person in the world or any Israeli. And right now in Israel and Palestine, Palestinians aren't getting basic human rights.
Time for a first break here from the South. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Telesur English and on my account, of course, as you can see it, at Laura P. Telesur. Stay with us.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests motivate the actors behind each event?
Se despliega el tablero.
Uncritical Moves investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on Telesur.
Back, a woman and a baby drowned off to the Libya coast after boat carrying about 100 migrants sank. According to the Libyan Coast Guard, 73 other migrants have been rescued while 25 more are still missing. Survivors said their boat sank after unknown assailants attacked them at sea and stole their boat's engine. The survivors are from Kenya, Ivory Coast, Nigeria and Sudan. Thousands of migrants have died while attempting to cross the Mediterranean Sea to Europe, escaping from war and poverty in their home countries.
A fisherman called in the incident of a rubber dinghy with migrants having capsized. They had rescued them and were on their way to the port. There are 8 missing and 2 dead. The survivors are 40 men, 25 women and 8 children.
And now we talk about Syria. Missiles have reportedly been fired at Syrian military air base. This comes a day after an Israeli strike on Syrian army targets, after rockets were fired at the occupied Golan Heights. 3 soldiers were killed in this, and this is the second such incident in a week. There were big explosions near Damascus before dawn. An Israeli military spokeswoman said it was still unclear who had fired the rockets, but the Syrian army was held responsible for any attack launched from Syrian territory. And now we go to the Caribbean. We talk about Cuba, where the 40 members of the Henry Reef Brigade contingent, which went to Mozambique to provide medical assistance following the passing of Cyclone Idai, have returned to Havana. They were received at the welcoming ceremony at the Jose Marti Airport by the Minister of Public Health, Jose Angel Portal Miranda. The team specializes in disaster and serious epidemics and forms part of Cuba's tradition of solidarity and medical collaboration, which dates back to 1963. The minister highlighted the work which was carried out under difficult conditions. President Miguel Díaz-Canel took to Twitter to welcome the brigadiers, saying that they have fulfilled their mission in Mozambique. On the brigade's team, the Cuban medical collaboration included the deployment of a field hospital which offered services in internal medicine, pediatrics, surgery, gynecology, orthopedics, traumatology, and clinical laboratory, among others. During their stay in Mozambique, the brigade carried out over 22,000 consultations and 331 surgeries. And also they took action to combat malaria, and more than 17,000 homes were visited. And now we have for you the 4th part of our series, Mozambique, the People Rebuild, that take a look at the challenges facing the Southeast African nation in its fight against illiteracy and the preservation of the country's many native languages. Andre Vieira, our special correspondent in Mozambique, have this story for us.
On March 14, Cyclone Idai hit Mozambique with winds of over 200 kilometers per hour. It left a path of destruction and caused the deaths of over 600 people.
The cyclone blew the roofs of our houses. It destroyed our communities and the fields we worked in.
An important tool for reconstruction efforts is education. While Portuguese is Mozambique's official language, it hardly is the only one spoken. As opposed to Brazil, which was also colonized by the Portuguese, here there are a lot of people who speak native languages. According to UNESCO, Portuguese is the mother tongue of only 10% of Mozambicans.
Here in Chibababa, Sofala, most people speak their mother tongue, their own dialects. Here, most of the population have not been able to go to school.
According to official sources, 90% of the population was illiterate during the 1970s, in the midst of the revolution. Today, according to UNESCO, illiteracy has dropped to 45%. Nonetheless, in rural areas, illiteracy figures stand at 57%, while in urban areas, it stands at 23%.
In Mozambique, women remain at a disadvantage when it comes to education. In urban areas, women can enter public schools, but in rural areas, women can expect to work the fields.
According to the 2017 census, 62% of women and 37% of men are illiterate in Mozambique. But even as Mozambicans face these harsh social realities, they must also push ahead with efforts to reconstruct schools decimated by Cyclone Idai. They are a fighting people who continue looking for ways to move forward.
As a teacher, you never stop facing new challenges, but the main one is using what we have at hand. I have asked my students to bring clay, so we can divide into groups and we can use the clay to create letters, so they can continue learning.
In a country where 90% of the people speak in their native tongues, preserving oral tradition is an important tool in ensuring that culture is also sustained. The successful merging of ancestral knowledge with formal education is one of the main challenges still facing Mozambique.
With these images of growing up, we go to a second break here from the South.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
We are back and we talk about Chile, where President Sebastián Piñera has announced reforms on housing, transportation and education as he presented the annual report of the first year of his government at the National Congress in Valparaíso. He also announced that he will reduce the number of deputies and senators in Congress and will install a limit on re-election for these positions. The president also highlighted the importance of security and mentioned how he has increased the number of national police on the streets by 3,000 over the past year. His speech received varying reactions from the opposition, but leaders of the Social Democratic Party, Gabriel Asensio, said President Piñera is not aware of the Chilean reality. Meanwhile, protesters clashed with the police in the capital Santiago de Chile while demonstrating against the government of President Piñera.
We are not happy with Piñera's government, its laws and its militarization in the Mapuche territory. We want them to leave the Mapuche territory and tell them that the lands are not for sale, not for rent. They just have to give them back.
And from Chile, we go to Honduras, where citizens around the country are in the streets for another consecutive day in rejection of the privatization of health and education. From Tegucigalpa, our correspondent Hilda Silvestrucci sent us this report earlier today. Welcome, Hilda.
Today, the demonstrations continue in the capital of Honduras, Tegucigalpa, as in the rest of the country. Teachers and doctors have said that they will not cease until the government of the republic cancels the two decrees which pertain to the two sectors of health and education are put at risk of privatization and which could see massive layoffs. In recent hours, there have been run-ins between police and demonstrators in different regions, particularly the northern region of the country, where yesterday a number of vehicles were burned, though we still do not know which side perpetrated these aggressions and attacks. However, the police have already fired live ammunition at protesters and a number of people have been injured. There are still no precise figures on how many victims there have been as a result of the police and the military repression. But there are witnesses and testimonies which speaks to the violence being used around the country.
Thank you, Hilda. And the transformations of Jamaica's police force is underway, with the cabinet having approved a contract for the acquisition of over 3,000 bulletproof vests. The government will also procure other safety gears and additional firearms. During the final year, a record $3 billion have been allocated to the police force. The investments are being made to help improve Jamaica's crime situation.
I believe that there should be no question in this. The government must ensure that every police officer has the standard safety gear to carry out their duties. And this is a commitment that this government has made. So the safety gear is now being procured, and that will augment what you already have in stock. Should more be required, be assured the government stands ready to provide that.
And we continue in the Caribbean. The Camañista movement in the Dominican Republic is criticizing President Danilo Medina for allowing U.S. military troops to land on the island to carry out exercises. The representative of the movement, Narciso Isaac Conde, pointed out that with this act, the president is seeking U.S. support for his re-election in 2020 presidential race. He said that such a decision gives a green light to the imperialist aims to progressively create an interventionist regional military force. Conde said that this coincides with interests which seek to carry out an assault on Venezuela and to recolonize Cuba while disrupting the sovereign processes of Latin America. And now we talk about sports, because Bangladesh has registered their first victory in the Cricket World Cup by defeating South Africa by 21 runs. Bangladesh Tigers made 331, their highest ever one-day total. Mustafiz Ar-Rahman was the leading wicket taker, while Saifuddin took 2 wickets. South Africa had threatened to complete the highest World Cup chase, but in the end, they lost wickets at critical times. Their captain was bowled for 62 times, and the defeat means South Africa have now lost 2 opening matches, but they face India on Wednesday in Southampton. And a historic moment indeed for sport in Latin America and Ecuador specifically. A cyclist, Richard Caparaz, won the Giro d'Italia. Richard Caparaz rode a perfect race to become the first Ecuadorian rider to win a Grand Tour. Italian Vincenzo Nibali, who was chasing a 3rd title, ended up 2nd overall. 1 minute and 5 seconds behind. Carapaz is the 2nd Latin American to win the renowned cycling competition in its history. And now we talk about traditions. A 91-year-old woman, who is the last speaker of Chile's ancient Yamana language, is fighting to keep it alive. Cristina Calderón lives in the small Yagan community of Villa Uquica that has long inhabited the remote tip of South America. The 91-year-old is the last remaining full-blooded Yagan and the last person to speak the ancestral language. And sometimes she herself worries about words slipping away. Over the generations, the people have stopped learning this language. In the year 2002, there were 1,685 Yamanas people living in Chile. Like this, we come to the end of this preview. You can find this and much more other stories on our website, territorialenglish.net, where of course you can read opinion article or watch our special interviews. Continue with Telesur, connecting the Global South. Until next time, thank you for watching.